Okay, so hi everybody. It's a true privilege being here. I hope you can see that the slide is moving and that all of the animations will work. Um, we're going to discuss the project like Hub Power and Hub Users, which is our most recent project, but also since this project is a part of a broader research project, we're going to discuss also a little bit the preceding paper, which is uncovering the role of hubs, which is sort of a foundational paper on top of which we built other papers. We're just finishing yet another paper in this line of research. You can see it here, our mega spreaders. So it's a very broad project and it has a lot of applications, and I'll try touching on the most interesting ones. So roadmap for today, we're going to discuss briefly antitrust conventional wisdom concerning network effects. We're going to get a little bit of a primer on network science, and then we're going to discuss a few concepts we developed based on network science insights, which are hub lacking competition. That's the focal point of the preceding paper, and hub power and abuses, which is the focal point of the paper, this paper. Okay, so what are network effects? Network effects, this much pretty much every antitrust scholar in the world knows. It's an economic phenomenon whereby the value of a service depends on the number of its users. And you can think of WhatsApp, right? So in WhatsApp, every user wants to connect to other WhatsApp users, and the more WhatsApp users there are on WhatsApp, the greater the value is for every to each WhatsApp user. Now, in the antitrust lingo, we typically differentiate between direct network effects, which is the case of WhatsApp, and indirect network effects, or two-sided platforms. And a good example of two-sided platforms is YouTube. In YouTube, you have two sides. You have content creators or streamers, and you have viewers. And the more content creators there are, the greater the value of the service is for viewers, and vice versa. Now, for our discussion, this distinction is not really meaningful. We're going to talk about network effects in a more general way. And the conventional wisdom on network effects, whether direct or indirect, is that once a platform attains a critical mass of participants, network effects confer to that platform a decisive advantage in attracting new participants and locking in existing ones. And rival platforms, even if they have superior technology or better business models, better terms, they cannot overcome the network size deficit. And to make things worse, there is a domino effect involved whereby every new participant that joins the larger platform exacerbates the network effects moat that protects it. And the concern is that network effects, if this dynamic is not checked, we will reach a winner-takes-all dynamic, a winner-takes-all situation, whereby an entrenched monopoly dominates the market. That's the conventional concern, and we get that, like maybe the most seminal case in which we got that from, this kind of argument, is the Microsoft middleware case in the late 90s. You can see here kind of a doctrine. Okay, so in markets characterized by network effects, one product or standard tends toward dominance. Once a product or a standard achieves wide acceptance, it becomes more or less entrenched. And Michal and I translated this line of reasoning into simply a formula. If I have network effects and I have a substantial market share, then I get platform power, right? A platform monopoly that is entrenched behind the network effects mode. And this immediately allows an antitrust decision maker to establish market power and move to inquire whether there is an abuse or what the remedy should be. This line of argument is very popular in antitrust circles for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's very simple. All we need to ask are two very non-fact intensive questions. Are there network effects? Usually the answer is immediately either yes or no. And does the platform have a substantial market share? Well, this is something antitrust law is very accustomed to finding, and usually when we're discussing Microsoft, Facebook, something like that, we can quickly establish that the answer is kind of yes. And I can apply this line of reasoning to every industry out there as long as there are network effects. And it yields an unequivocal conclusion: platform market power. So because of this line of reasoning is heavily relied upon in establishing market power. True, antitrust law does deal with other entry barriers, but this line of reasoning is very prominent. It's also accompanied by very powerful rhetoric. For instance, I don't know how many of you have heard of the platform RealComp, which is a broker platform in Michigan. Okay, so you can see network effects compared to RealComp, substantial market power, and made successful entry by a rival improbable. Or with regard to Android, indirect network effects create black oceans which make competition with Android impossible. Now, these two platforms pretty much have nothing in common, right? They're not the same size, they're not, right? But the line of reasoning is common. You can use it no matter what the situation is. Now, we're going to attack this line of reasoning when hubs are present. And to do that, we're going to employ network science. So network science can be very technical. I know all of you guys are probably very tech savvy, but to make this a little bit more fun, you can have here the map of Game of Thrones season 1. The nodes of this network are the characters, and the links represent interactions between the characters. And antitrust conventional wisdom was rooted in a simplifying assumption whereby every node is equally valuable to the network. And of course, you can see immediately in this network, in this Game of Thrones network, that this is not really true, right? Some of the characters here are way more central than other characters. Ned Stark here talks to roughly 50 characters, whereas the average participant in this network, I can tell you, talks to between 3 and 4. So Ned Stark is way more important in this network. And indeed, many networks have these nodes that are orders of magnitude more connected than the average node. This is an animation of the World Wide Web. By the way, I've taken the animations from Barabashi, who is like the father figure of network science today. This was taken in the early 2000s. And you can immediately see that some of the websites in the World Wide Web are way more connected, the links here are URLs, than other websites, okay? So this topology, this architecture is very common in real-world networks. Now, why does it matter? It matters because the fact that hubs are present in the topology of networks has profound implications to the robustness of the network to failing processes. And to show you this, we're going to run 2 animations depicting exactly the same network, 50 nodes each. And on the left, we're going to remove nodes at random. And on the right, we're going to go after the hubs. We're going to remove the largest hub, then the second largest hub, and so on. And you can immediately see that the process on the right is considerably more effective than the process on the left. In fact, to break the network on the left using random node removal, I will need to remove pretty much all nodes. And to do it on the right, I can do it with roughly between 5 and 50% of the hubs. Now, you might tell me that, okay, you've shown us a really small network, right, 50 nodes. But this principle holds for networks encompassing millions and billions of nodes. So I won't let it run any longer because due to time constraints. But building on this insight, in my first paper, I coined the term hub plucking competition. And my idea was that many platforms of interest probably exhibit hubs. For instance, Facebook, I have roughly, I don't know, 800 Facebook friends, whereas Cristiano Ronaldo has 170 million followers. And if Ronaldo and other Facebook hubs were removed, Facebook's network will suffer severe disruption in comparison to an average user. But going beyond that, there might even be what we call a cascade, right? So if Ronaldo is removed from Facebook's network, and let's say Messi and I don't know, Michael Jordan, whoever, right? Their followers might also leave. And if they leave, then other streamers, other celebrities might leave, and the platform may face a much greater disruption. all of this suggests that the network effects mode has an Achilles heel, because the reverse may also be true, right? If I'm a platform that wants to compete with Facebook, I want to build my network, I can tell Cristiano Ronaldo, leave their platform, but also join mine. And if I manage to steal enough of these hubs, their followers will follow, and I will be able to grow my network into a sustainable site. Doesn't mean that the network effects mode is meaningless, but less formidable than antitrust law probably perceives. Now, this hub plucking strategy was actually implemented by Twitch. So in the early 2010s, YouTube was the top dog in video game streaming. And Twitch, the CEO is on record, Twitch realized that there were about 200 streamers who really mattered. And they went to each of these streamers and told them, what do we need to do to make you switch to our platform? Now, at the time, Twitch wasn't owned by Amazon yet. They didn't have a war chest. They didn't have groundbreaking technology, but they did that. And for a while, even managed to dethrone YouTube. YouTube immediately strikes back. And today, those firms compete over prominent streamers using exclusivity agreements and so on. Millions of dollars, by the way. So up until now, we reached a point where you could have told me, okay, so antitrust law thought that there is a problem, network effects mode. You showed us that this problem is less severe than initially perceived. Good. Antitrust law can probably lay back and end of discussion. But and here we go to the starting line of the paper we like you to read. We ask the question, okay, but if the platforms depend on the hubs, then maybe the hubs can abuse their own power. And what happens if the hubs abuse their own power? How will different entities within the platform ecosystem will react to that? Now, of course, sometimes the hubs may use their power for good. And in the paper, we give the example of Taylor Swift fighting for the little guy in receiving royalties from Apple Music. But we also discuss instances where hubs abuse their power unilaterally in coordination with other hubs, or maybe the most interesting case, by harnessing aggregate power of unwilling nodes. So I won't go through all of the examples, but the example we give to illustrate this dynamic, the first one, is when Magnus Carlsen, who is arguably the greatest chess player to have ever lived, maybe only Kasparov or Bobby Fischer rival him, he faced in 2022 a lesser chess player by the name of Hans Niemann in a professional chess match, and Carlsen was soundly defeated in the match. Okay, anybody who knows a little bit about chess have immediately seen that Carlsen was simply losing badly. Now, Carlsen very quickly accused Niemann of cheating in the match, even though there was absolutely no evidence that Niemann has cheated in this exact match. There was circumstantial evidence implying that there was prior cheating, but nothing in the match. And Chess.com, which is the world's largest chess platform, on its face, protected behind the network effects mode and all of that, immediately aligned itself with Carlsen. And they blocked Niemann's account and banned him from participating in any of its organized events. This shows you that even though we have like a clear monopoly, a clear platform, with substantial size, network effects, all of that, they still have to play a game with regard to the hubs. When the hubs clash with one another, they need to choose with which hub to go. And in the chess world, you don't go with another hub other than Carlsen unless the situation is very radical. So this is like a hub versus hub scenario. And you can see that the platform goes with the bigger hub. We show other instances. Sometimes we show instances in which the hubs coordinate together in order to push back against a monopolistic platform. And we show that with the US versus Apple case. The hubs there were publishers, and the platform was Amazon. And they fought with one another over pricing. And eventually the hubs managed, when Apple entered the game and provided an alternative platform, the hubs managed together to push against Amazon's pricing scheme, even though Amazon at the time had a market share of roughly 90%. So again, it shows you that hub power in combination can be a formidable force. Now, whether or not this case describes a pro-competitive or anti-competitive dynamic depends on whether you take a short-term view or a long-term view, and we discussed that in the paper. On the short term, clearly, what the hubs did in this case is anti-competitive, and this is why it was condemned. But long term, it's unclear, it's less clear. So we discussed that. But maybe the most interesting case, which I'll jump to, is the GDS case. The GDS case is based on a real case. I was an attorney in that case, as a matter of fact, and it kind of launched my JFD project. So what are GDSs? We're talking about roughly 2018 in terms of year. GDSs are two-sided platforms that intermediate between travel agents and airlines. So you can see we diagrammed it a little bit on the right. And what happened was that a major airline without a monopoly in any line raised its fees to several travel agents and told them, unless you pay, you cannot see my inventory. Now, importantly, this major airline had a collaboration agreements with other airlines. Two types of collaborations. One is called co-share. It's when you board a flight and several airlines sell tickets to that flight. So several airlines compete over the same flight. And another collaboration is called interline. It's when you board essentially a connection. So the travel agents refused the major airline, and the major airline pressed a button and blocked its inventory to the travel agents. So far, so good. But then a glitch occurred. And on all three GDSs, which now we're going to assume that they're roughly the same size, meaning none of them have a monopoly, on all three GDSs, not only the inventory of the major airline, the blocking airline, was blocked, but also all of the inventories of the collaborating airlines. This is tantamount to a group boycott. And if there was an agreement between the blocking airline and the collaborating airlines to do so, that would have been immediately condemned. But here antitrust law fails to capture the dynamic because we don't have any agreement between any of the parties involved. Nothing between the airline and the GDSs, nothing between the airlines and the collaborating airlines, nothing of the sort. We don't have a monopoly, and so the travel agents cannot effectively sue under antitrust law. It's even weirder than that when you think about it, because you would have thought that the GDSs would have told the blocking airline, hey, you're darkening a large part of my network. Why are you doing that? But of course, the GDSs will not go to war against a major airline for a few small travel agents, right? They won't do that. So we're faced with an anti-competitive dynamic, a network dynamic, that antitrust law doesn't have yet the tools to capture. Now, in the paper, now of course, under our framework, the major airline, the blocking airline, is a hub, and the reason they can block effectively a large portion of the network is because they're a hub and they aggregate the power of other major airlines. So in the paper, we develop a framework how to assess hub power. And we distinguish between a few factors. The first is how good the hub is at attracting new links. So one parameter here is fitness, what is called fitness in network science. That is essentially the innate talent of some node in attracting links, say Taylor Swift talent. But the major driving force is what is called the preferential attachment, which is when nodes tend to link to more connected nodes. Now, other major factors are the extent to which the platform is dependent on the hub. So how many hubs are there? Can you replace those hubs, et cetera, and the ability of the hub to switch platforms, how dependent the hub is on the platform. And lastly, we discussed the fact that hub power is a very relational concept. It depends on against who you exercise hub power and how powerful that entity is within the platform's network. So it's a very nuanced analysis. But the key takeaway that I want to leave you here are those. First of all, hub blocking competition is an interesting dynamic, probably a very consequential dynamic that drives inter-platform competition. It lowers the network effects mode and allows platforms to compete with one another over hubs. But we should also factor in intra-platform dynamics. We should also factor in the extent to which hubs can abuse their own power against other entities within the platform system and develop a more holistic legal regime, not only antitrust, by the way, but a legal regime that will govern platform governance, achieving equitable results. So thank you, and we're looking forward for the Q&A.